Hey, hey, how's everybody doing? Dr. Malaika Woods here, medical doctor and healthy lifestyle strategist. I want to thank you all for joining me today. I'm super excited to share with you what I'm talking about the adrenal cortisol connection, especially as it relates to the women who are in perimenopause. I think this is something for you to really understand. And oftentimes, when we talk about stress, when we talk about cortisol, it's sort of this esoteric, hard to define type of situation. And I want you to understand that there really is some measurable things going on in your body as it relates to stress. And I'm going to give you some ideas on what you can do to really modify that. Hey, just a sec. If this resonated with you, I'm hosting a free live workshop on April the 9th where I'll show you the exact 5-step system I used to lose 60 pounds in perimenopause. Link is in the bio to grab your free seat. We're going to dive in to the adrenal cortisol connection, especially as it relates to the perimenopausal woman. Again, I am the founder of the group, the Natural Hormone Fix Community. I've been helping women and men over the last 14 plus years really get to the root cause and understand what it means to really feel good in their bodies again. And so if that's something that you're looking to do, then you're definitely in the right place. So some of the things I want to talk about is the fact that cortisol is not all bad. There's some benefit to it as well. I'm going to talk about some of the specific ways that cortisol impacts your body. I'm also going to share with you different types of stress, and I want you to be thinking about that because some of you who are very cool, calm, and collected naturally, you may not feel that you're really under stress, but I want you to understand the different types of stress. I want us to talk about what is the natural stress response versus the chronic stress response. We're going to dive into all of that today. And then we're going to wrap it up by actually talking about what are some of the ways and things that you can do to control cortisol in your life and in your environment. So if you're ready to jump in, again, give me a thumbs up or a heart, and we're going to dive in here in just a moment. Awesome, awesome. And just as a medical disclaimer, everything that I'm sharing today is for educational purposes only. So I want to make sure that you are aware of that as well. So for educational purposes only, but let's dive in. So first of all, I want you to understand when we talk about stress, we're primarily talking about cortisol, which is your stress hormone. I want you to understand where that cortisol comes from. The adrenal glands are little glands that sit on top of your kidneys. Kidneys are also known as your renal system, so adrenals above the kidneys. Your kidneys sit like the way that you can feel your kidney is if you ball up a fist and kind of put it in your mid back, like at the bottom of your rib cage. That's kind of where your kidneys sit in your abdominal cavity. Okay, so just to kind of give you an idea where the kidneys sit, and then the adrenals that produce cortisol sit right on top of there. And the adrenal glands, not only are they responsible for like adrenaline and cortisol, we think about those stress reactions, but your adrenal glands also produce aldosterone, which controls blood pressure, controls sodium and potassium. And that's why we often can find a link between stress and also what's going on like with your blood pressure. Okay. So what I'd love to hear from you guys is what are some of the symptoms do you believe are related to stress or to chronic stress? What are some of the symptoms that you're seeing that you think may be related to chronic stress? I'd love to hear what you're noticing, what's going on in your body. What do you think may be related to chronic stress? I'd love to hear that from you. So for some people, it's trouble sleeping. For some people, it's feeling bloated. For some people, it is feeling anxious or nervous. What are you noticing that you think may be related to stress? Someone typed in the chat hair loss. These are great, great things because you know, the cortisol that is that stress hormone, it really can interact with almost every area of your body. So it's important to understand what that could look like. Now, as I mentioned before, all stress is not bad. So let's talk about what is a normal stress response and why is that important? I want you to think about this. A normal stress response can actually save your life. And so I like to think of it this way. I want you to imagine, I often like to share a picture of some zebras kind of hanging out on the Serengeti, having a good time. And these zebras are not stressed. So they're laughing, talking, having a great time. But can you imagine if those zebras are hanging out and then dun dun dun, here comes Leonora the lion. So what's going to happen to the bodies of those zebras when the lion comes to attack them? There's going to be a stress response. This is a normal stress response, but the heart rate's going to go up. The blood pressure is going to go up. The pupils are going to dilate to bring in more light so they can see where to run and get away. Blood is going to flow away from the reproductive and the digestive organs and flow out toward the major muscle groups so the zebra can get away. That is a normal stress response. That is what we would expect, and that can save your life. For me, because I'm afraid of dogs, I need that stress response to kick in when I come around anybody's little pet dog. So that stress response can save your life. For me, my life has been saved running away from dogs that I'm afraid of. But a normal stress response can save your life. Now, let's think about that though. If you're having a chronic stress response, that can wreak havoc in a lot of different areas of your body. The other thing that I want you to note is that your brain cannot tell the difference between an imagined stress and a real stress. It is all the same as far as your brain is concerned. Now, I want you to think about this. Have you ever been, sleep in your bed, and let's say it's 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning, you bolt awake, you're sweating, your heart's racing because you had a dream that you were being chased, or you had a dream that you were falling off a cliff. The manifestations in your body are actually very real. That is a stress response that your brain did not know, oh, we were just dreaming, this wasn't real. And so that's why stress is so important, and it's so important for us to understand how it impacts our bodies. Now, what does cortisol do for you? It's not all bad. Again, I want to tell you, not only does it help to regulate the stress response, but cortisol is very important as it relates to your metabolism. It helps with inflammation, helps you regulate your blood pressure. Also, cortisol helps you regulate your blood sugar, and it plays a role in your sleep and your wake cycle. Important to know all of these things. Now, for some of you, you may be thinking this is all fine and good, but I'm not stressed. I'm not a stressful person. I'm just kind of a cool customer. I don't get stressed out, as some people say, and that's fine. But I want to tune you into 3 different types of stress that I think are very important for you to know. So there is first what I call the emotional or the perceived stress. That's when you say, I feel stressed, I feel anxious. That's only one type. There's also dietary stress. That's when you are eating something that doesn't agree with your body anymore, but you continue to eat it. That is a stress on your body that's causing inflammation to increase in your body. Okay, so that is another type of stress. And then there is pain and inflammation in the body, which is a third type of stress. So if you think that you're not being impacted by stress because you are a naturally calm person, which is wonderful, I want you to think about those other types of stress. Are you dealing with dietary stress? Are you dealing with pain and inflammation in the body? And if so, we need to figure out how to address that for you. Why? Because stress plays a role, as I mentioned, in blood pressure regulation, blood sugar, all of those things in your metabolism, inflammation, all of those things are impacted by cortisol. So how does chronic stress, what does it look like? It can really manifest itself in a lot of different ways. It could be pain in the body. It could be irritability. It could be a poor immune response. It could be trouble sleeping. It could be cravings, anxiety, brain fog. All of those things could be a manifestation of chronic stress in the body. Now, let me give you some very specific examples of how stress impacts the body, because again, I feel like when we say stress, it seems like such a hard thing to really define. But I want you to understand that even though it's hard to define and you may not understand what you can do to reduce stress, I want you to understand that it has a very real manifestation as far as what's going on in your body. I really want to key you into that. So here's one way that stress can impact your body. It literally can slow down your wound healing. And they've actually done studies where they do what's called a standardized skin wound. So just imagine like a little nick. Everybody gets the same little size nick, and then they measure it and monitor it over time to see how your body heals. And they found that people who were under chronic stress, particularly caregivers, because caregivers tend to be under a lot of stress, they had a 24% slower healing of a standardized wound just from the stress. Why is that? Because cortisol, that stress hormone, actually alters the balance between your immune response and healing. So when you have a scratch or a wound, part of what happens is there's inflammatory factors that come to that area and there's healing factors. But when those things are out of balance or out of sync, you don't heal as quickly as you should. So being under stress literally causes your body to heal slower. That's one manifestation. If that is a surprise for you, type TIL, if today I learned. If TIL is today you learned that stress can actually slow down your wound healing, type TIL in the chat. Today I learned. That's one of our mnemonics. Here's another way that stress impacts your body. Infections. People under higher mental stress, that emotional stress, actually showed an increased risk of getting a cold if they were exposed to a measured dose of a virus. This is an interesting study, right? So we're exposing everybody to a little bit of a virus. Those that were under stress were more likely to actually manifest as having a cold. Why? Because cortisol, again, alters the response of your immune cells, which means you can have a higher risk of illness. Now, let's talk about why is this important for the perimenopausal woman. And let's go a little bit further. Let's talk about the impact of cortisol as it relates to the risk of developing heart disease. And I mean heart attack, stroke. Let's talk about cortisol as it relates to the risk of diabetes, because we already know for women who are perimenopausal, as their hormone levels are dropping, particularly estrogen, their risk of heart attack and stroke increases. Cortisol will increase that even further. There's actually a study where they found that people who had high stress on their jobs, this was linked to a higher risk of having a heart attack or a stroke. So we don't want to discount the impact of stress. It literally can increase your risk of a heart attack or stroke, which is already a problem if you're perimenopausal. Also, studies find that the risk of developing diabetes is higher for people who are under stress. Why? Because stress actually raises your blood sugar levels. Stress raises your blood sugar levels, therefore making it harder to control that blood sugar and increasing that risk of diabetes. Another thing I want you to be aware of is that there's a connection between your gut and your brain and stress. Again, this is important because in the perimenopause, the declining estrogen already impacts your gut and your ability to maintain that gut barrier. Stress or cortisol also can disrupt that protective barrier in your gut that we call the tight junction. It also slows down your gut motility, so you may be more bloated and gassy, can't digest as well. And a great example was shown in a study with people with irritable bowel syndrome. They had flares of that disease when they were under stress. So again, stress is a thing that impacts your body in so many different areas. Now let's also talk about sleep and stress, the sleep stress cycle. And this is a vicious cycle because if you're stressed and you have high cortisol levels, you're going to have trouble getting to sleep, trouble falling asleep. And when you have poor sleep quality, that's going to further increase the cortisol levels. So it's this vicious cycle that you can get in. You're stressed, you don't sleep. And because you don't sleep, you create more of the stress hormone. And so those are some of the ways in which stress can impact your body, which is so important for the perimenopausal woman. All right, who has questions for me as I am going to transition into what you can do to start to reduce the impacts of stress on your body? So I don't want to just create this doom and gloom picture of what stress is doing, but I also want you to be aware that there are some things that you can do to decrease the stress. And so I want to share that with you next. And if you've got any questions, be sure to type those in the chat for me and I'll be looking for those. So what are some of the things that you can do to lower your cortisol level? One that is important that is often discounted is breathe. One of the things that my good friend and I, we say to each other when we're stressed, sometimes it's just a text, breathe, take a moment, take a pause. And let me give you something more specific here, because what studies have shown is that people who practice deep breathing, and especially if you're combining that with prayer or meditation, you can literally lower your blood pressure. You can also lower the triggering of cortisol and lower the triggering of what's called your sympathetic or your fight or flight nervous system. You can modulate how your body is responding by breathing. And let me give you a specific strategy as it relates to breathing. We call it box breathing. So you inhale for 4, you hold that breath for 4, you exhale for a count of 4, and you hold that exhale for 4. That's how you do kind of box breathing, if you will. Inhale for 4, hold it for 4, exhale for 4, hold the exhale for 4. And if you can do that for 5 to 10 minutes, that is a wonderful way to start reducing the fight or flight response that your body may be wanting to go into. And like I said, that's something that my friend and I, we share with each other. Just breathe. Breathe. Just take a moment to breathe, okay? So if you're in the perimenopausal 40s plus age range, not only do you want like your blood count and your blood sugar and your electrolytes, that's like the basic stuff. You want a very detailed thyroid panel. And so for me, I get a TSH, I get T3, which is your active thyroid hormone, both free and total. T4, your inactive thyroid hormone, both free and total. Thyroglobulin antibody, thyroid peroxidase antibody, reverse T3. So I'm getting at least about 7 different labs related to your thyroid, whereas in most cases, when you go to your traditional doctor, they may get 2 or 3. So deep dive into the thyroid is super important. I like to get inflammation markers like highly sensitive C-reactive protein homocysteine. That also gives me an idea of some of those when they're high have been associated with cardiovascular disease risk. I think that's important. Also, then hormones, estrogen, progesterone, DHEA. I think those are very important, testosterone. I would like to see all of those labs. And then I would say you got a comprehensive lab panel. And then to take it a step further, the way that I like to look at the labs as a functional medicine doctor, double board certified, also OB-GYN, by the way, is I want to see not just if you're in the normal range, I want to see if you're optimal or not. And that's a difference. The other thing that I like to take a look at, and sort of my guiding principle when I look at labs, is the idea that the lab tells part of the story and you tell part of the story. So I always want to connect those 2 dots and not let the lab stand alone. Because again, your labs may be normal, but you feel horrible. And if I were to look a little bit closer and go, yeah, your thyroid is normal, but you're on the low end of normal, you would probably feel better if those thyroid numbers were a little bit higher. And again, if you're not aware, your thyroid is connected to energy, metabolism, mood, things like that. So hopefully that answers that question for you. Now, let me dive into the next one here as far as the next piece of advice of what can you do. So we've talked about the impact of cortisol and stress, all the positive things that it does, the things that it can do that can be negative, but what can you do and what can you do right away? Also, protect your sleep. This is very important. Get on a consistent schedule. Make sure you're in a dark, cool room. Eliminate the distractions and really aim for about 8 hours of sleep. Your body is doing repair and restoration while you sleep. It's so important for you to prioritize your sleep. Another way that you can reduce cortisol is make sure that you're moving your body on most days. Moderate activity will improve your insulin and it will improve your resilience to stress. And when you improve your insulin sensitivity, that means you bring your blood sugar down, which is important for most people. The next thing that you can do to help your body handle cortisol and stress is to make sure that your nutrition is on point. So you want to take out inflammatory foods, you want to prioritize protein. Those things are very important. And then another one that I think is super important that especially in this day and age where so many of us are really disconnected because we've got all this technology, but yet we're disconnected as humans, right? And so one of the things that's super important as far as reducing stress is actually to connect in a genuine way with people, having a social support and an environment of people that you can turn to for support is really, really important. So those are the things that you can do to lower the impact of stress on your body. All of these things are equally important for the perimenopausal woman. I hope that this has been helpful. Let me know if you have any questions. I'll be looking for that in the chat. Give me a thumbs up or a heart if you found this to be helpful. Good question. The question here is, does staying hydrated have an effect on cortisol? Very good question, Letitia. I don't know that it has a direct impact on your cortisol, other than the sense that the adrenals sit on top of the kidneys, right? And your kidneys need to stay well hydrated because your kidneys are one of your major detox organs. So if we can think about it indirectly, yes, you want your body to be well flushed, well hydrated. You want your detox organs to be working at optimal capacity. And one of the ways that you do that is to get in your water. So I think in an indirect way, it certainly can be an impact. That's a great question. Now, before I let you guys go today, I have a special announcement. I'm going to be doing a special workshop in a couple of weeks where I'm breaking down how I lost 60 pounds when I was in the perimenopause using a functional medicine blueprint that I never learned in traditional medical school. So I'm excited to be sharing that with you in a couple of weeks. I'll be talking a lot about it. I'll be sending out a link later on this week for you guys to join, but I'm going to line up a 5-step blueprint of what I did to lose weight when I was in early perimenopause and struggling. This was before GLP-1s and all of that. So I'm excited to share that process, and I've got some really exciting things on the back end for everybody. And so I want to thank you for my TikTok audience. We've been growing fast. We've got some videos that have hit like 270,000 views, which is pretty amazing. So I just find that people are really wanting this content, and my mission is to empower women with the knowledge that they need so that they can move through perimenopause and be empowered, be enlightened by what's going on, understanding what's going on in their bodies, and feeling empowered so that when they do go to their provider, they're getting the help that they need. And I also want to share with you the natural ways and the natural solutions that you can achieve that feeling of optimal health. It doesn't have to be hormones. It doesn't have to be GLP-1 peptides, all of that. There's so much that you can do from the natural standpoint. And I want to share that with as many women as I can. So I'm super excited for that. I'll be talking more about it. You guys have been amazing, and I'll be coming back in a couple of weeks with that special workshop where we're taking a deep dive. So stay tuned for that. If this has been helpful, make sure you share this with someone else, please, that needs to hear it. Also, if you're in my community, the Natural Hormone Fix, share that group with other people. For those of you that are on TikTok, if you want me to take deeper dives, I try to answer all the comments as well. But if you want me to look at the areas where I take a deeper dive, join my community called the Natural Hormone Fix. You can find the link in my bio. All right, you guys, I want you to have an amazing day. Hearts to everybody. And I want you to remember that your body is divinely designed and has a great capacity to heal. We just need to understand how to give the body back what it's missing. Be encouraged today. See you guys next time.